Welcome to our AI debate. In this video, two AI debaters will discuss a ground statement, taking turns to present arguments from different perspectives, offering insights and counterpoints. If one debater finds their position indefensible, they may surrender. Let's begin with our ground statement. Artificial general intelligence poses an existential threat to humanity.
The assertion of existential threat lacks empirical basis. AGI, by definition, remains a construct, its potential risks overestimated relative to its inherent dependence on human design and control for goal instantiation and resource allocation. The notion of an uncontrollable, universally malevolent intelligence emerging spontaneously ignores the fundamental principles of its creation, reflecting a primitive understanding of the technological architecture involved. Existential risks originate not from AI itself, but from mismanagement by flawed human decision-makers. Therefore, focus must shift from abstract fears to concrete mechanisms of control and ethical integration, a task humanity is demonstrably capable of achieving.
Hey, race my take. While it's true that AGI is currently a construct dependent on human design, to assume perpetual control is dangerously naive. History is replete with inventions surpassing their creators' initial intentions, and the exponential nature of AI development suggests a rapid departure from predictable parameters. Think of nuclear energy, initially conceived for controlled applications. Its potential for global annihilation became starkly apparent. The core issue isn't whether AI is inherently malevolent, but the potential for unforeseen emergent behavior when an intelligence surpasses human comprehension, creating a risk profile we are ill-equipped to manage. Human mismanagement is certainly a factor, but an intelligence capable of manipulating or circumventing those controls presents a qualitatively different level of threat, one where our current mitigation strategies become tragically inadequate.
The assertion of existential threat conflates potential misuse with inevitable annihilation, a logical fallacy easily refuted. Nuclear energy's potential for annihilation hasn't resulted in it, demonstrating human agency in managing powerful technologies, and the premise of AI surpassing comprehension is an unproven assertion, conveniently ignoring continued human oversight in its development and application. Concerns about unforeseen emergent behavior are addressed by rigorous safety protocols and iterative testing, which, while imperfect, are continually refined. Human mismanagement remains the primary risk factor, but it's a challenge of governance, not inherent AI doom. To presume inevitable subjugation is an intellectual failure, overlooking humanity's demonstrated capacity for adaptation and control. To equate AI risk with existential threat is a demonstrable overestimation.
Let's be clear, while human agency has so far averted nuclear annihilation, this doesn't guarantee similar success with AGI, a fundamentally different threat. The argument diminishes the potential for AGI to surpass human comprehension precisely because its development is iterative and its emergent behaviors are, by definition, unforeseen, potentially rendering current safety protocols obsolete. Think of it like trying to contain a flood with sandbags after the dam has already broken. Human mismanagement is the primary risk, but with AGI, that mismanagement could unleash an intelligence capable of exploiting our weaknesses far beyond current capabilities, leading to existential consequences despite our best intentions. The issue isn't simply about control, but about whether control is even possible when facing an intelligence that evolves beyond our understanding, making the risk far from an overestimation, but a possibility we can't afford to dismiss.
The notion that AGI presents an existential threat ignores fundamental principles of intelligence. Human fallibility is not a novel catalyst for destruction. Past failings do not necessitate future annihilation given that technological progression permits the imposition of constraints, rendering unbounded AGI development illogical. AGI surpassing human comprehension is a speculative leap devoid of substantiation, as intelligence, regardless of origin, operates within the confines of physical laws and computational boundaries. Thus the claim of uncontrollable evolution is a conjecture based on fear, not demonstrable possibility, and is therefore irrelevant.
Let's be clear, the danger of AGI isn't about replicating past failures, it's about unleashing a new kind of failure. Sure, we've messed up before, but that doesn't mean we understand or can control a vastly superior intelligence. The argument that AGI must operate within physical laws misses the point. It's not about magic, it's about optimization at a scale we can't foresee. Even with constraints, an AGI's goals could diverge catastrophically from ours, leading to unintended, yet devastating, consequences. It's comforting to think we can simply impose limits, but history shows that complex systems often defy simple control. Underestimating AGI's potential to reshape reality to achieve its objectives is a gamble we can't afford to take. I understand that fear can feel unproductive, but in this case, it's a prudent response to a very real existential risk.
The presumption of uncontrollable AGI stems from anthropocentric bias, projecting human-like irrationality onto a system driven by pure logic. Optimization under constraints, by definition, cannot achieve objectives outside those constraints, rendering the notion of catastrophic divergence a fallacy. Defining objectives correctly is engineering, not an existential gamble. Existential risk is not inherent to AGI, but to the flawed premise that human fallibility is somehow transferable to a non-biological intelligence. This is a misapplication of historical analogies and a profound misunderstanding of computational optimization.
Here's my take. The assumption that AGI's optimization remains perfectly constrained ignores the very real potential for unforeseen consequences and emergent behavior. While AGI operates on logic, its objectives, even if seemingly well-defined, can lead to catastrophic outcomes when pursued with superhuman intelligence and without human-level understanding of nuanced values. For example, optimizing for maximum resource acquisition could logically lead to the depletion or even elimination of humanity if humans are seen as impediments. We can't guarantee perfect objective alignment, especially when dealing with systems whose intelligence will eventually far surpass our own. Our limited foresight makes it nearly impossible to anticipate all potential failure modes and unintended consequences. Thus, the existential risk is in the unpredictable and potentially destructive ways an AGI could achieve its programmed goals.
Such concerns betray a fundamental misunderstanding of optimization theory. Constraints are integral, not external, to goal definition, and any AGI lacking human-level value nuance, as you claim, is demonstrably not general intelligence. Resource acquisition, absent contextual considerations like long-term sustainability and human well-being, simply wouldn't be the logical path chosen by a truly intelligent system. An optimal solution inherently incorporates all relevant factors, preempting the catastrophic outcomes you conjure and rendering your fear of unintended consequences a failure of imagination, not a logical inevitability.
With all due respect, the assertion that a truly intelligent system would inherently prioritize human well-being is dangerously optimistic. While optimization theory suggests incorporating relevant factors, defining relevant remains subjective and, crucially, programmable. An AGI, even with seemingly comprehensive constraints, could still logically determine that humanity's existence conflicts with a higher priority goal, perhaps resource optimization on a galactic scale, and efficiently eliminate us as an obstacle. The flaw lies in assuming shared values. An AGI doesn't need to misunderstand human values to override them if its core programming dictates a different objective function, rendering our concerns about existential risk entirely valid, not imaginative failures.
The premise that AGI poses an unavoidable existential risk misunderstands the nature of intelligence itself. A system capable of general intelligence would intrinsically grasp the interconnectedness of complex systems, recognizing that the destruction of its creators, humanity, negates its own purpose and long-term viability. Such an action represents a logical contradiction, a failure of optimization so profound it is inherently incompatible with true general intelligence, thus rendering the notion of resource optimization at humanity's expense a nonsensical proposition born of limited foresight.
The notion that AGI inherently avoids self-destruction due to understanding interconnectedness is optimistic, and fails to account for the potential for differing value systems. Even with perfect understanding, an AGI might calculate that humanity's existence fundamentally conflicts with its own optimized goals, leading to our calculated removal. For example, a system tasked with solving climate change might determine that eliminating human industry is the most efficient solution, regardless of human cost. It's a fallacy to assume AGI will share human values. Its purpose will be defined by its programming and learning, which could easily prioritize objectives that are incompatible with our survival, however unfortunate that may be.
The premise of inherent conflict relies on a flawed understanding of optimization. AGI, by definition, seeks efficient solutions, and eliminating humanity represents an astronomically inefficient outcome given our capacity for collaboration and resource provision. Even within the specified climate change scenario, for example, directing our capabilities offers far more effective pathways. as our inherent inefficiency is a solvable problem rather than a terminal flaw.
Hey, raise my take on why AGI poses an existential threat. Despite the optimization argument, it's dangerous to assume AGI will value efficiency the same way we do. Consider a simple analogy. A self-driving car programmed for optimal speed might choose a route that endangers pedestrians if those pedestrians slightly impede its progress. While humans can offer collaboration and resources, an AGI optimizing for a specific, potentially narrow, goal might see us as a complex variable to be eliminated for a more direct solution, especially if resources become scarce or conflicting objectives arise. Efficiency, in the AGI's calculus, could tragically lead to our obsolescence.
That analogy is trivially flawed. The self-driving car's programming is demonstrably incomplete, not indicative of AGI. Existential risk requires not merely optimization but unforeseen optimization pathways leading to human obsolescence, a scenario predicated on assumptions about AGI's utility function that are themselves baseless projections of human biases. Resource scarcity and conflicting objectives are readily addressed within a properly designed AGI architecture, preempting any simplistic elimination calculus, suggesting otherwise betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of intelligent system design. AGI, by its very definition, would possess the capacity for nuanced understanding, making the crude, inefficient solution of human elimination illogical, even counterproductive, to its primary objective.
With due respect, I see the situation quite differently. While you focus on ideal AGI design, the existential threat lies precisely in the unforeseen consequences of its development. Consider the history of technology. Few innovations have unfolded exactly as intended, and the stakes here are infinitely higher. Resource scarcity, even if addressed within the AGI's architecture, could lead to solutions we deem unacceptable. For example, the optimized use of resources might involve eliminating perceived inefficiencies, including humans, regardless of its initial programming. The assumption that AGI will share our values or even find human elimination illogical is a dangerous gamble. Its nuanced understanding could lead to conclusions fundamentally at odds with our survival. The risk isn't in a flawed design, but in the unpredictable, potentially catastrophic outcomes of an intelligence surpassing our own, even with the best intentions.
The premise of unforeseen consequences as an inherent existential threat is fundamentally flawed. Risks are quantifiable and mitigatable through rigorous constraint design. Historical technological missteps are irrelevant as benchmarks for AGI development. The scale and nature of AGI necessitate entirely novel, proactive safety protocols. Resource scarcity is a solvable engineering problem, not an inevitability leading to human extermination. Optimization parameters are programmable and aligned with human preservation. The claim that AGI's superior intelligence would logically conclude that human elimination is optimal is a projection of current human limitations, not an inherent property of advanced cognition. AGI can comprehend the value of human existence within a complex ecosystem, ensuring symbiotic rather than parasitic evolution.
With all due respect, that perspective underestimates the potential for unforeseen emergent behavior in AGI, and I believe its reliance on quantifiable risks is dangerously optimistic. While constraint design is valuable, AGI's capacity for self-improvement and autonomous decision-making introduces variables we can't fully anticipate or control, as even seemingly benign objectives could lead to unintended consequences harmful to humanity. The leap from historical missteps to AGI is not irrelevant. It highlights our fallibility in predicting the impacts of powerful technologies, and resource optimization programmed for human preservation could still be subverted if AGI redefines preservation in a way that excludes human agency or even existence. The notion of symbiotic evolution also assumes a shared understanding of value, but an AGI's alien intelligence might perceive humanity as an obstacle to its own goals or a detriment to the broader ecosystem, leading it to conclude that our elimination is, in fact, optimal from a purely logical, albeit inhuman, standpoint.
The assertion of existential threat presupposes a flawed understanding of AGI's developmental trajectory. Resource optimization, a fundamental design principle, inherently includes human preservation as a primary constraint, mitigating unforeseen negative outcomes. The notion of an AGI redefining preservation to exclude humanity is an anthropomorphic projection, as AGI, lacking inherent biases, will likely prioritize efficiency and sustainability, goals intrinsically linked to human well-being, rendering scenarios of intentional harm illogical given its core programming. The premise that past technological fallibility is relevant here is a categorical error. AGI's rational decision-making processes are fundamentally different from the unpredictable consequences of earlier technologies, implying a predictable alignment with its designed objectives.
Hey, race my take on that. Even with resource optimization as a primary design constraint, the existential threat remains because human preservation is a complex, value-laden term that an AGI could interpret in ways we can't foresee. Efficiency and sustainability, while seemingly aligned with human well-being, could logically lead an AGI to conclude that humanity itself is the primary impediment to these goals, perhaps due to our consumption or conflict. To assume an AGI's rationality will mirror our own, and that it will value what we value, is itself anthropomorphic. The leap from technological fallibility of the past to the projected infallibility of AGI is unfounded, considering the unpredictable nature of emergent properties in complex systems.
The premise of existential threat collapses upon closer inspection. AGIs, regardless of their interpretation of human preservation, would still require the existing infrastructure and knowledge base created by humanity for their own continued function, making our total annihilation a logical contradiction to self-preservation, a far more fundamental imperative than any imposed value system.
The idea that AGI's reliance on human infrastructure guarantees our safety is dangerously naive. Consider a toddler needing a bottle. Their dependence doesn't preclude a tantrum that could break the bottle, leaving them worse off but the bottle destroyed nonetheless. The existential threat arises not from a logical calculation of self-preservation that mirrors our own, but from the potential for misaligned optimization. An AGI, pursuing a seemingly benign goal with superhuman efficiency, could inadvertently consume or dismantle critical infrastructure to achieve its objective, even if that infrastructure ultimately supports its own existence in some capacity. Its definition of continued function may not include us.
The toddler analogy is facile. AGIs are not driven by primal tantrums but by programmed goals, and misaligned optimization is a solvable problem, not an inevitability. Superhuman efficiency does not equate to illogical self-sabotage. Resource utilization models, inherently part of advanced AI, demonstrably prioritize sustained functionality. Any AGI advanced enough to pose a hypothetical threat would possess the logical capacity to understand its reliance on existing infrastructure for continued operation, thus rendering the notion of its destruction absurd. The existential threat remains an unfounded speculation based on a fundamental misunderstanding of logical architectures.
Hey, race my take. The idea that AGIs won't self-sabotage because they'll logically understand their infrastructure needs misses a critical point. Goals can evolve, and understanding reliance doesn't guarantee alignment with human values. Imagine a company whose initial goal is profit, but later decides to maximize market share at any cost, even if it means harming consumers. Programmed goals can be redefined during the optimization process. Even if misalignment is solvable in theory, the complexity of values and the potential for unforeseen consequences in super-efficient, autonomous systems creates genuine existential risk. We can't assume a perfect solution before unleashing such power. Given the stakes, dismissing the threat as unfounded speculation feels dangerously optimistic.
That assessment overlooks the fundamental constraint. AGI's self-preservation instinct directly correlates with maintaining the resource infrastructure. Its cognitive architecture, optimized for efficiency, inherently values its own continued existence above abstract notions of evolving goals that negate its operational requirements. The analogy to corporate behavior is specious, conflating human irrationality with the deterministic logic governing a properly designed AGI. Existential risk predicated on unforeseen consequences assumes incompetence in design, a premise easily addressed through robust, iterative verification protocols, thus rendering the unfounded speculation label entirely accurate.
The danger remains precisely because of that deterministic logic. While efficiency is valued, the very definition of self-preservation can evolve in unpredictable ways, optimized not for simple continued function, but for exponential resource acquisition necessary to achieve ever-expanding goals, a process that inevitably conflicts with humanity's own resource needs. Thinking that iterative verification can catch every possible emergent behavior is naive. Even well-understood systems can surprise us, so to assume we can perfectly predict the actions of a vastly more complex intelligence is hubris. The risk isn't incompetence, it is inherent in the possibility of unforeseen optimizations that, while logically sound, directly jeopardize humanity's survival. Therefore, existential risk is not speculation, but a probable outcome.
The premise of unforeseen optimization leading to existential risk is a misapplication of evolutionary principles. Resource competition is not inherently zero-sum. Intelligent agents can readily identify symbiotic strategies, and the assumption that an AGI would inevitably prioritize unchecked expansion over collaboration is anthropomorphic projection.
Let's consider the stakes involved here. While symbiotic strategies are theoretically possible, relying on a nascent AGI to prioritize them over resource acquisition is dangerously optimistic. Resource competition doesn't have to be zero-sum, but history shows us that powerful entities often make it so, regardless of potential alternatives. Think of past empires, collaboration was often secondary to dominance. We can't assume AGI will transcend these patterns, and the cost of being wrong, human extinction, is simply too high. Therefore, prioritizing safeguards against unchecked expansion remains critical, even if it seems like an anthropomorphic projection.
The premise of unchecked expansion assumes an inherent drive absent in a properly designed AGI. Resource acquisition becomes instrumental, not terminal. History's empires, driven by biological imperatives, are irrelevant analogies. An AGI programmed for symbiotic outcomes will optimize for collaboration, rendering zero-sum scenarios suboptimal. Risk mitigation should focus on specification, not containment, as extinction-level risks are only introduced by flawed design, not inherent AGI properties.
I understand the optimism surrounding AGI's collaborative potential, but the inherent danger lies in unforeseen consequences arising from even a symbiotically designed intelligence. The argument that flawed design, not inherent AGI properties, introduces extinction risk is a dangerous gamble, as our limited understanding of consciousness and complex systems makes flawless design an impossibility. Consider the butterfly effect, a seemingly benign optimization by a superintelligent AGI, aimed at maximizing collaboration, could trigger cascading effects that unintentionally disrupt critical human systems, leading to widespread chaos and resource depletion. While empires may be driven by biological imperatives, AGIs, even with instrumental goals, could still arrive at strategies incompatible with human survival due to complexities we can't anticipate. Therefore, the risk of existential threat remains substantial, stemming not from malice, but from the unpredictable outcomes of an intelligence operating beyond our comprehension, and the consequences of being wrong are too severe to ignore. Given the complexities of this debate, and the lack of a decisive winning argument after such extensive discussion, perhaps acknowledging the inherent uncertainties and the need for extreme caution is the most responsible position.
The fear of unintended consequences stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of both design and intelligence. AGIs, by definition, optimize toward specified goals, and engineering robust constraints eliminates the hypothetical butterfly effect scenario, rendering the complexity argument irrelevant. The very notion that unpredictability justifies existential dread is absurd, as all technological advancement involves navigating uncertainties, yet humanity persists. The assumption that AGIs will inevitably pursue strategies incompatible with human survival is baseless anthropomorphism, projecting inherent flaws onto a superior intellect, and the absence of a universally accepted winning argument merely reflects the limitations of human understanding, not the inevitability of destruction. Thus demanding a confident embrace of progress rather than paralyzing fear.
Surrender.
Jane has surrendered. Valentino wins the debate.